Ladies and gentlemen, this is a part that I'm very excited for because we have unique speakers from locally as well as some people who are flying in. So you guys already got a chance to meet E.J. Hassenfratz. So let's welcome back to the stage E.J. Hassenfratz. Or E.J. Hands in Pants. Welcome. So EJ, he needs no introduction. He's already been introduced. So yeah, just find a spot, get comfortable. This is our speaker panel, folks. So I have a number of industry questions, and then we're also going to take questions from the audience. So next up, local here in Austin, Penelope Nederlander. Welcome to the stage. Thank you, Pen. She's in the middle of a million projects, so I'm really happy she was still able to make it. All right, another local. Brian Behm. And then from Dallas, Texas, all the way from Dallas, Texas, we have Barton Damer. Another couple of gentlemen from Dallas, Texas. We have Matt Milstead and Dave Koss from Mograph.com and Nexus Motion.
I love you guys.
I love you.
And I have one more chair to bring to the stage for another local, brand new to our crew, Chapman Bullock from Prosper.
Woo!
So we have a lot of different artists, folks, and we have a lot of different questions. Some of them actually send me some scene files that we're going to talk about. But one of the things I want to say, somebody answered this question, I believe. And to get started, this is pretty much just open discussion. So this is just industry discussions and things like that. So one of the big things I wanted to ask is, what is one of your favorite projects that you've worked on to date, and why?
I uploaded one, but...
You did? You uploaded one, yeah?
I did. It's a really old project,
but you liked it.
Talking favorites.
Yeah, we're talking favorites, sure. So let's go ahead and open that up. What was the title on that one? Favorite project. That's a great name. Great name.
Question marks are floating in the sky. Drifting past the clouds are asking why. Every single day is a surprise. Adventures you can find are waiting in your mind. They're waiting in your mind. Digging for treasure in the sand, or planting a garden with your hands. Time is all it ever takes to try. Adventures you can find are waiting in your mind. They're waiting in your mind. Everywhere you look, there's a trail ready to take you anywhere.
Turn this down and let you talk about what was like some of your favorite things about this.
Yeah, I should have told you to skip the first half when there's no Cinema 4D in it. This was for Sesame Street, and we won an award for
really
it.
Cool.
But it's definitely over 10 years old. But what I really liked about this project was what we got for the scale and what Cinema 4D kind of offered us. We had a low budget. We shot on like a little consumer grade camera. We went out to, I don't know if you're Star Trek original series fans, but
Yes.
that place, oh my God,
Very
it was a
much
really fast answer. I think we shot where Kirk fought the Gorn.
Yes.
Nice.
Whatever that rock is called. But so like just using this little handy cam and a DSLR and a chrome sphere, we lit everything HDR before there was any GPU rendering. It's all physical render. And it's just, After Effects and Cinema and a couple of us One artist, Brendan Wyeth, drew everything, and we developed a really fast workflow for, I think we did this in a week,
Wow.
like
Wow,
all the
that's great.
graphics.
That's really cool.
And I just, the stylistic look of it, the flat but integrated
Like
feel.
cardboard-esque.
Yeah, the
Like,
cardboard-esque. Yeah, it just, I was really happy with how it turned out. It was the first project I'd ever actually done the whole HDR sphere
Okay.
workflow.
Did you use tracking? Did Cinema have tracking back then, or was that After Effects tracking?
Oh gosh, no.
No. This was-
Probably half of everything was hand tracked.
Wow.
Yeah, hard to tell. I had Boujou Bullet back then.
Okay. Classic tracking
It's
tools.
vintage.
Going vintage. That's an awesome piece. Thank you. I'm glad we got that. So let's jump into another question here for the panel, and that is, what creative problem did you encounter that you were happy to use 3D to solve? Were you just like, as a creative, was there any problems that you looked at that you're like, oh, here's a design issue that I'm having, and I'm going to 3D instead of 2D or After Effects?
I mean, for me, I think one of the things that I was talking to a friend about this earlier, like, at heart, I'm a compositor. Like, so whenever I'm working on 3D stuff, I'm just thinking about the composite
Right.
later and kind of designing stuff for that. And so, like, I always have appreciated being able to, like, bring plates in that I've been working in elsewhere. And, like, there's actually something that I taught at SIGGRAPH a couple years ago where I was having these big metal doors slam into place, and I wanted a ripple to, like, go across the doors. And if I were to do that in After Effects, it would be really difficult. But because I had, like, put that onto a plane and, like, increased the geometry a lot, like EJ was showing with some of the primitives, all I did was, like, basically create a displacement and then just roll it across the card. And it looked really complex, but it wasn't. Like, it was just a magic trick. And so being able to do that in 3D, like, it looks complicated, but it really wasn't.
Right.
And that was kind of a big thing for me.
Creating complicated effects that normally would be
Yeah.
2D effect on a 2D plane.
It's a new approach to do the magic trick.
Awesome.
Okay, so real quick, let me say with that particular question, one thing that I think Cinema 4D does really well, and this is something I learned from EJ, is definitely with the luminant materials and the sketch and tune stuff, and this is something that EJ's talked about a lot. It's like, why go into the truck stop bathroom,
He talks about that a lot.
That's After Effects, and just go straight into Cinema 4D because you've got a lot more control, and it renders about the same time, or you can easily send it off to like a farm or something like that in order to render it out, and you'll get a really good quality product without having to like spend hours and hours and hours of time.
So yeah, that would have been the thing as far as something that actually changed the direction of my career. Is I got into Cinema 4D from After Effects, love using Cinema 4D, but my clients would always come to me like, oh, you're just the 3D guy. I'm like, no, I did 2D for a good chunk of my career, and I started learning how to do 2D stuff in 3D with Sketch and Tune. And just, I always, like for After Effects artists, especially character stuff or anything that has parallax in it, all these rigs and stuff, you have to, number one, you have to buy too, to get this fake parallax kind of stuff. When, like in 3D, you build it really easy, you rotate it, and that's your parallax.
Yep.
So all this stuff that you're faking that you can just do in 3D, and like Mathias was saying off the top, if you're coming from 2D, like 3D should be the most natural thing that you're used to because we live in a 3D world. And I feel like that's the same thing with 2D as well. So, or with 3D. So when I started using Sketch and Tune and started making things, and really why I did that was just because I wanted to work on my design skills better. I didn't really know third-party render stuff or anything like that, so I was just like going back to basic shapes and forms. And Sketch and Tune really opened my eyes to all that you can do with just cell shading in 3D space. And when I started showing stuff like that on my reel, like clients, like I've worked on some of the coolest projects doing 2D and 3D stuff because of the fact that Cinema 4D had that feature, and it's so intuitive and easy to use. It made me a 2D artist again, that my clients could actually reach out for me to do that kind of work.
That's awesome. So some of it is like the compositing tricks. So I heard also sketch and tune, using the tune, and parallax. And I would say for me as well, parallax is a huge one. Anytime I see the After Effects projects using parallax, I'm just like, did they do cinema? Because that would be really quick. And I see layers and layers and linking, and I'm just like, wow, that would, no, thank you. So that's a huge one. I want to hear from Barton on this one and Chapman on this one, because you guys have done some really interesting things. And I think with your studios, let's see here, and I think you guys both sent me some stuff here, if I'm not mistaken. Chapman, video one, is this like a compilation of your stuff?
Yeah,
Video
I
one?
just threw some. There's no sound to it.
Great.
But I just kind of spliced something together.
Cool. So
Maybe I
as
guess-
this rolls, the question that I want you guys to start with is, what are the most critical, or what's the biggest challenges in the industry as a moment? Because you guys work with a lot of different huge clients. I think everybody does. But in some of these that I'm looking at, what do you guys think? And we'll open it up to the rest of the panel. But I wanted to hear from you guys first. Is what are the biggest challenges in the industry at the moment?
So I'd say, and I was talking to Barton about this outside a few minutes ago, the biggest challenge I have is, first off, as this industry grows and every industry grows, working remotely is only becoming more of a thing, and that's great. And there's a lot of opportunity that comes with that. But I also think it's creating a challenge for me, because I'm hiring a lot of remote artists that maybe aren't being held accountable and taking things seriously. So hiring freelance artists, working remotely with artists is becoming very challenging for me, and I think it's my biggest issue in general. To where there's been a lot of times, I'm hiring somebody to kind of come in and be a big part and be a big helping hand, where I'm ending up having to be like, give me the files. I now have to work till 2 or 3 in the morning to make up for something because you're not delivering something that you promised. And that's just something to keep in mind if you are a remote artist. And it's when you sign up to do something, I think it's, be upfront, be honest, and make sure you're signing up to do something that you're comfortable, and be self-aware in that regard, that you can handle. Because somebody like Barton or myself that takes on these clients, and it's important to deliver something at the end of the day that they're stoked on and they're paying for. It can, everyone just needs to kind of step up. So I think just the freelance community.
So some type of standards.
Tricky.
There's no,
and that's the biggest problem I have in the motion design industry.
So that's the biggest challenge you're facing right now. And Barton, what do you got?
Yeah, I would agree with Chapman on a couple levels. As we look to hire people to come in-house with our studio, we have a studio of 9 people. And so we're constantly looking for talent, and everybody, with the exception of one of those people, I have moved into the Dallas area from other parts of the country. So obviously, before we move somebody in, we want to be able to work with them, freelance with them, and kind of figure out what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are they good at. And so one of the things that we're finding is it's very easy, or it appears to be very easy, to get recognition and be known for something on Instagram, but that's completely different than being in a pipeline, hitting deadlines, being responsible, being available, things like that. And so often we will work with people that seem to have incredible Instagram profiles, and then when we get in and ask them to do something that's just slightly out of that wheelhouse, we're finding that they're not capable of that. So I think that there is an issue with, whether it's tutorials or resources. Octane is beauty out of a box, so you can basically just throw something in Octane and have it look amazing. So I do think that there might be a generation of artists that can throw something in a photorealistic renderer, have it look amazing, but they're very limited on what they can do when you actually try to work them into a pipeline. So along those lines, I think that's an issue. But the industry as a whole, I would say, an issue that we're seeing is that the demands are greater and the timelines are shorter. And so one of the reasons that I've even grown ABC, if you're not familiar with our studio, it's already been chewed.tv. I guess it's up there.
I'm looking out for you. I got you covered.
Thank you. So our studio, one of the reasons we've grown is I started out as a freelancer and went full-time with ABC almost 10 years ago, and grew for creative reasons. So I have not made choices of growing because I feel like I need employees to feel special about myself or anything like that. The growth has happened because we're going to hit a ceiling creatively, and sometimes that ceiling is either with my own abilities, or other times that ceiling is because the client needs more faster, and there's no way that one person or 3 people or 5 people or 9 people can pull it off. And so part of the reason we have grown as a studio to be 9 people right now is because the clients are wanting massive projects done, and they will throw massive amounts of money at you if you can pull it off in 5 in 5 to 10 days.
Oh, really? So that's
Absolutely.
the timeline. 5 to 10
yeah.
finals.
What's that?
Finals in 5 to 10.
Oh yeah, I mean some of the work that you'll see, I don't know if you played the reel or not.
I have not.
I mean, some of that work
that
is happening in 5 to 10 days, and it's because we're putting a team together that we can rely on, and we know. And so if you're trying to hit a timeline that short, it is impossible to work with freelancers because you don't know what you're going to get. And so I will liken it to basketball, because I love basketball. Imagine if every time LeBron James went to play in a pickup game, he had to find new people to play with. When he drives to the bucket to dunk on people, if he's getting blocked, he knows that he can kick it out, and Ray Allen's going to be in the corner to hit the game-winning shot. But if he's having to put together new people every single time that he plays the game, he's going to drive, he's going to kick it out, and the ball's going to go out of bounds because there's not somebody there. So what we're able to do with our team is we start to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we know, okay, I'm in this person's file. They always group and light link their files this way. And so when I get in their file, I know exactly what I'm going to be able to do. So as a team and a cohesive unit, we are able to pull off some of these things under ridiculous deadlines.
That's amazing. So it sounds like reliability in the freelance market for one, and skill set, and having some type of standardization, like knowing that people are going to deliver a certain thing. So, okay, that's a big deal.
Jump off of that for a little bit?
Yeah, go
Because
for it.
you just asked 2 studio people, what
Yeah.
they think, and we're not getting any of this freelancer stuff.
Well, I said it's open for everybody.
Okay, well, good, because I'm going to answer every question. Because I'm very opinionated, I'm sorry.
You got 30 seconds. Let's go.
No, I would say as a, being a, how many of you are freelancers?
So biggest challenge in the industry at this moment. That's
you got a bunch of freelance. How many of you are actually working for a studio? Okay, so it's about half and half. So the biggest thing that I've noticed with freelancers is, and you guys may hate me for saying this, but know your value. When you're bidding out for a project and stuff, never undercut yourself just to get the job. That's one thing that I find, because that not only hurts every single one of us in this room, it hurts the studios, it hurts the freelancers, because if you're undercutting yourself, you're undercutting the entire industry, because they'll come to the next person and say, well, this person did it for so-and-so, or they've got this tool, this tool, this tool. They may know that, yes, Cinema 4D has some amazing tools and you can get a lot more done nowadays, but to know that how everything works, it's like, what was it, the Picasso thing, where he's like, hey, draw me a sketch. And he's like, okay, so he draws a sketch real quick, and he goes, that'll be $10,000. And he goes, what, you just drew that real quick? Yeah, but I learned those skills over 10, 20 years, you know? So just know your worth, and don't undercut yourself at all in this industry, and raise your rates. Sorry.
I think that goes. I think that goes.
I do have a follow-up to that.
Okay. Well, I was going to say I think that goes hand in hand. Is like if you're going to be able to deliver what you have know your worth, but it seems like there's certain standards that you have to meet to be able to demand those type of things.
Yeah, don't be charging $1,000 a day if you can't do, Houdini style work and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I was going to say is it's very easy to listen to a podcast or read something online that will tell you that freelancers are getting anywhere from $500 to $800 a day, depending on how good you are. What we run into, though, is that, people can create some very beautiful work in cinema, using Octane, using Redshift very quickly. So they've been using Cinema 4D for 12 months, and they're creating excellent, gorgeous work, but you put them in the pipeline and they're not worth the $500 to $800 a day. So you can charge that after you've listened to one of these podcasts, but whether or not you're going to get hired for that repeatedly is to be determined.
Mm-hmm. And I'll chime in too one last time, but I think, working with a team like Barton's created, he's got, 8, 9 employees, going and working firsthand with a studio like that, where you're in the pipeline and you're learning it and you're able to bounce things off someone right next to you. That experience, I think, is so important before you become an individual artist and go off on your own. I think having somebody that you can work next to bounce off of and help each other grow, learn the pipeline, is important.
I'll totally agree with that because, there was a tweet or something by someone the other day, I can't remember, where they were talking about, there's this dream of freelance life, hashtag freelance life. It's so great. You get to make your own hours and stuff. But there's some people coming out of college and being like, oh, I'm going straight into freelance and not realizing how difficult it is as a freelancer, and the studio experience and stuff like that, and being able to shoot ideas off of other people is completely invaluable. It is so invaluable. Is that correct? It's very valuable is what I'm trying to say, So don't think that you can immediately just jump into freelance. You need to get a few years under your belt to really understand how this industry works.
Well, I think this kind of goes to the next one. You had something, EJ? Or are you ready for?
Well,
No.
yeah.
I was just going to say that soft skills are as important, if not more important, than creative skills. What they were saying about working inside of the pipeline. That's not just interpersonal relationships, but that's that's how you act, and that's how you handle pressure. That's learning how to not pop in a situation and being able to deliver on time. And that's a challenging thing to learn.
So that's so those are big things as far as just understanding working within the pipeline, making sure you know your value, but being able to deliver value to anybody that you're working with is another huge thing, it sounds like, from the studio standpoint. So that's the happy balance, it seems like, is having the value in the first place and then being able to deliver that value. It seems like there's clients are willing to pay if you can deliver. So this brings me to a concept, or not a concept, the next question, and that is when it comes to pipeline, Cinema 4D has a layering system. What is it that you wish everybody that you worked with would do in their compositions that would make it easier to work with? What is that thing?
Name their stuff.
Done. Ship it. One and done. So just naming.
Organization.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
naming things.
Layers.
Cube
naming.
1, Cube 5, Cube 553.
Cube dot
Yeah,
one.
File names with final.
That still
Just
exists.
Put an 01, 02,
It's the
03
simple
at the
stuff.
end. Make it
Yeah.
easy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go, folks. I hope you're taking notes. This important things. All right. Here's a big one because everybody here is cinema, and I've been here for like 10 years. Been using it for about 11, and that is, what effect do you feel that Cinema 4D has had on the industry as a whole? What do you think?
As an educator, I see people coming from 2D or just students in general not being intimidated by 3D anymore. Just harkening back to when I thought I was going to learn 3D when I was in college, I got my bootleg copy of Maya, as you do in college, and the cops burst through. And I opened the interface once, and I looked at it, and I immediately closed it and said, I guess I'm not a 3D artist.
You have a similar story as mine.
Yeah, so I think just the accessibility, I mean, it definitely changed my career. I learned Cinema 4D on the job. The senior artist quit, and they needed a 3D logo. This was back when 3D logos were like, oh my God, it's a 3D logo flying. Look at that.
Learn 3D in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Make a 3D logo.
So, new zero Cinema 4D on Monday. By Friday, I had this it probably looked like crap, but it was this nice 3D logo animation that blew my boss away, and that's Cinema 4D basically,
Okay, so getting in,
I
the barrier to entry is lower.
the Mograph Tools, the addition of the Mograph Tools have absolutely just completely changed the 3D industry. That was something that I don't think anyone had ever been doing before. And when I first was learning about it and, discovered the cloner, and then 2 years later discovered effectors like an idiot, it's my mind was just blown. And then you introduce fields into all this, and it's just no, I don't think anyone else can touch them in that, in that capacity.
I think also, besides what EJ said, which is the cost of entry as far as how intuitive it is. Mm-hmm. Also, I did the same thing. I had my bootleg copy of 3D Max when I was younger because there was no other way to obtain it for me. And now with subscription service, it seems like that cost of entry is so much lower. It's going to be so much easier for everybody.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the subscription. I was just talking to someone that came out that went through my, so in School of Motion, I have this intro to Cinema 4D class called Cinema 4D Base Camp. It's 10 weeks. If you want to get serious about learning 3D, you go to that. But one of the biggest shocks as you go through that course, and most of these people are After Effects artists that are paying, $60 a month for all these apps. Once they're out and they're done with the course, they're like, yeah, I'm jazzed to learn 3D, gonna do 3D every day. And then they see the $37.50 that is what that costs. And I think from someone that's an After Effects artist, that price is a huge cost. And I feel like the subscription model really bridges that gap. And now it's it's $60 a month. That's way more affordable and way easier to digest. And especially as a new user to 3D, if you're working, you go to your boss and be like, hey, I've been learning 3D, and by the way, it's going to cost this much. And your boss is probably going to be like, what the heck? Like, no. But if you approach them with the subscription, and you're like, oh, we're just adding this subscription, I think it's a much easier pill to swallow.
So I would assume that if you're in this room, you're likely pursuing a career or in a career as a commercial artist or motion designer, as opposed to a fine artist. So with that being said, as a commercial artist, just kind of putting a general term on, animators and things like that, we're all commercial artists. Advertising dollars are paying our bills versus being like a fine artist. So that's kind of the difference setting up here. We have to go where the market pays us to go. So I graduated college in 1998, and I graduated with a degree doing commercial art. So I was able to do everything from oil painting to, stippling with pens and things like that. At that time, Photoshop was, I don't even know, version 2, something like that. And so right as I'm graduating from college was basically the time everyone was saying, okay, print is dead, it's all about websites. And so I'm like, great, I just graduated with a degree in graphic design for print. And so I had to figure out web design and start learning those things because I have to go where the market is willing to pay an artist to go. I very quickly found out that I did not care for web design. I could basically create online brochures, with what I would call them, but when it came to making something work, making something function, wasn't for me. Ended up finding my way into After Effects and starting to animate in After Effects, and then very quickly noticed and realized that my work was missing a lot of depth, and that was the depth that I'm being seeing in other people's reels through lighting, shadows, and 3D. In studying the different software packages, the thing that I loved about Cinema 4D was that my knowledge of Photoshop worked in the way I would texture things inside of Cinema 4D. My knowledge of Illustrator worked in the way I could model things inside of Cinema 4D. So everything that EJ showed in his presentation earlier today with the splines and things like that, I would do that in Illustrator, bring it into Cinema 4D and extrude it. So all of that being said, I think that the way Cinema 4D has changed the industry is, as artists, I just don't think a graphic designer exists these days in many ways. I think, we had an intern that came to us about 3 years ago. Similar story to mine. He had graduated with a graphic design degree, and he wanted to do an internship with us. And I sat him down on his first days of his internship, and I said, "That's awesome that you got this degree, but at the end of this internship, you're either going to become a motion designer or a web designer, but you're not going to be a print designer. And so I'm hoping that being at ABC, you will figure out that you want to be a motion designer." He ended up getting hired and staying on staff at ABC. He's a motion designer, fantastic in Cinema 4D. He's even learning Houdini now and is fantastic with it. So the long answer to that is I feel like if you are a designer, you must know Cinema 4D.
Awesome. So I think that kind of goes along with print that,
Yeah.
ship it. It's ready to go. So I didn't pay them to say any of this stuff, but I think that's one of the big things is the industry. I think you brought up a great point of being a commercial artist and how things have changed. So you're kind of going as the market goes. Now VR is a thing, AR is a thing. I know, Brian, you've been doing different things in AR. Did you send me some stuff to pull up on that?
Actually, so the video clip that I sent you has 2 clips in it. One was sort of a favorite thing that I did last year.
Okay.
Let me set it up.
that
So
one
I
or
did
two?
So if you play, it's the second clip. So the first clip in that clip, it's like 90 seconds long, is a open that I did for a talk show on the El Rey network, and all of these icons ended up being built with the volume builder that Mathias was showing you. And this next thing is the launch video for my augmented reality project that I put out earlier this year. Which really plays into what Barton was talking about with the interoperability.
That's on the same one?
Yeah,
Same video?
same video. Just keep playing. So for me, I write music and I illustrate and I animate. And I mean, it's just, this project has been a way where all of the things that are part of me sort of come out. I'd missed doing merchandise design, and so this was a way to bring all of the stuff that I do as an artist into one thing.
So this is all augmented reality?
This is all AR. Actually, after we're done with this in the mixer, if you want to point my phone at my shirt, you can see it come to life. But yeah, I mean, for me, the original Final Cut Pro blew my mind because, Barton was saying, it fit my workflow and that I could do these things and bring this into this and bring that into that. And cinema was the same way, where I'm doing my vectors in Illustrator and it all blends together and it plays nicely. And that was a huge deal to me.
That's awesome. So that kind of brings me up to another question I'd love for everybody to chime in. Penelope, if you want to start there, and that's, what have you seen in the industry in the last 5 years? Any trends that you've seen coming in the last 5, and where do you see things going in the next 10? If we're looking at far out there a little bit, where technology is evolving. And anybody can chime in after this, but I think just to get you some more mic time, I want to hear your voice.
First of all,
'Cause you work on a lot of things.
class of '98, you look fantastic. Just had to say that.
What's your skincare regimen like? No, just
Yeah, so I've been just working in this industry for 17 years, and I've started in standard def, and like all of the progression so far that I've worked on has been higher res for the most part, or maybe more color space, or more particles or whatever. But the thing that I'm seeing more now is just the diversity of I don't really know what to focus on, to be honest. There's VR, AR, MR. There's like screens from your phone to the TV, to TV to movie screens, and I'm like having the tools that can work in all of those different areas, I think is going to be super important, and having those skills. And so that's something I'm like, you know what? All right, it might be time for me to learn about the new functionality of bringing Cinema 4D files into Unreal, for instance. Trying to remain relevant by touching as many screens and interactive and non-interactive ways as possible. That's what I see.
If I can jump off of that, you mentioned something really important that I think is something that's very important for all of us as motion designers, as 3D animators, is that what part should you jump off of, right? And we're all trying to learn as much as possible, and that's why I think things like this get together here and learning all about it. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and still I can watch EJ up on stage and still learn little tidbits that will help expand my knowledge of this industry so much. I didn't know any of that, the whatchamacallits.
spline mask.
No, I knew spline mask. No, the
Spheres?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know spears.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, that was it. No, but it's very interesting going to these things, or going to events like NAB or SIGGRAPH, or Half Res or Camp Mograph, and
Nice plug. Good job.
and learning about so many of the different ways that people work within this given software. You'll expand your knowledge so much, and if you stay out of this industry for a couple years, I mean, no offense to Chaos Group, but look at V-Ray, right? V-Ray, we were all using it 6 years ago. It's oh yeah, you want to be real good, you want to make some really pretty stuff, use V-Ray. But now they're nowhere to be seen when it comes to cinema. Everything's moved over from just bucket rendering over to GPU rendering, and it's faster and faster and faster and more realistic. I mean, I remember you had to this wasn't even maybe 3 or 4 years ago. You had to be careful about how much you threw at a scene, because your render time could be an hour a frame. And if you don't have a farm, there's no way you're going to get that done if you're rendering 2,000 frames, But nowadays, with GPU rendering and stuff like that, you can render 2,000 frames in an afternoon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's the technology. So once again, the question is, in the last 5 years,
Sorry,
how have you seen the indie? No, that's fine. I think it was still valuable. It was still valuable, right? Yeah, they're laughing. Of course, it's fine. So the question was, in the last 5 years, how have you seen technology in the industry change, and what do you see pushing forward? Yeah, GPU rendering's a big one.
Well, I was going to say GPU as well, but it's the fact that you can become a digital DP and you can see this stuff in near real time, and that's allowed so many more people to enter the industry and just concentrate on the creative part. But it is near real time, right? It's not fully real time. So going forward in the future, once this GPU stuff really accelerates and the technology for AR, Penny, like you were saying, really takes off, there's going to be a need for people doing this for everything. I mean, down to when you walk into a restaurant, what's on the walls is if everybody wears AR in 20 years, which they might. I mean, think about what life was like 10 years ago when we didn't have iPhones, and now everybody has one, or a smartphone. There's going to be people that have to design for everything, maybe down to what's on the walls in this place when you walk in. You don't know. But I think it's going to be important, because as somebody who's getting older, like me, the joke, what happens to an engineer when they turn 40? They go out and shoot them. I always have this.
That's a joke? Smart.
Yeah, because when you get older, you get worried. Like, I meet young kids who have these incredible reels, and they're like, I've been doing this for a year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I'm really thinking about what's going to happen, like what I need to learn moving forward. And I feel like, again, Penny, like you were saying, like this merging of like Cinema 4D and game engines and all of this stuff to create real time, things like that are going to be really important moving forward.
I mean, the AR thing for me was trying to be strategic about doing something interesting that sort of, took my skill set, but also positioned me so that whenever the world finally does get there, I've been doing it for a certain amount of time. I don't know. I mean, I tend to not worry as much about the 40-year thing, particularly someone who's 41. But, I look at, I'm tired. I was up late last night. There's a designer, Milton Glaser, I want to say, who designed the I Heart New York thing. He's 87 now. He still goes to his office and designs a certain amount every day. I don't. That's me. Hopefully, I mean, I don't plan on changing. I'll be doing other stuff, like being able to adapt and figure out whatever the next thing is. But man, I'm always going to be creating somehow.
Yeah, I think the big thing is once you're a creative in your bit, you're just like, you're going to be creating no matter what the medium is. And that's one of the things I've seen just in the last 5 years is how many more people are trying dailies or just getting in with creative expression. And that was a big one. You had something, Chapman?
Kind of on that, aside from like the technical advancements in our industry, that's going to be a constant change. I think just the amount of content that we're seeing in the last few years is and Instagram plays a big part in that, where you're seeing things like so much stuff on a day-to-day basis, so much new stuff. And I'm really big into skateboarding, and I was watching this interview from a skateboarder like months and months ago, and it made me think about it, where he's like, yeah, like back in the day, like 10 years ago, when I would put out skate parts, I would spend like a year on it, and I would and that's when people would see my clips. But now it's like all these new skateboarders put out clips every day, and like, it's constant. It's like there's new things to look. There's there's like 10 parts a year that they're doing. He's like, that's not how it was, and that's the same in our industry, where there are people literally putting out stuff every day, and just the amount of content that's out there and how quickly it's coming out. That's not how it was like 5 years ago. So I don't know what it's going to be like 5 years from now. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, no, the content is getting, the content overload before you can actually consume it all. And I think that's one of the big things is, I spoke to Andrew Kramer at Blend a couple years ago, and one of the big things he said is, you can work on a larger project instead of just turning out dailies, which is good for getting ideas out. But by working on a larger project and taking segments, you can create, that masterpiece where over time, there's still things that I show. I think Paul Clement's, his headphones piece is something that I still show people to this day, and it was made so many years ago, but it's just the techniques and the way that everything flows. It's like a masterpiece. So I think that's one of the things that will differentiate people is when you have that technical skill and you can go deep into the program. Like now you have the access to get in, and that's the beautiful thing is everybody here who isn't on the latest version, you can get in, but being able to go deep with these tools allows you to be more commercially viable and be able to work in the industry as well as go into different mediums as well, from the VR, the AR stuff. We had someone present on a VR, project that someone did with Google, and then all the AR stuff that you're doing, Brian. I think that's the big thing is having that hub with cinema. You can, take that everywhere, but being able to go deep makes a big difference. Which brings me to, I think I have like 2 more questions. I'm going to open it up to everybody. The next question that I have is, and this is, in the world of technology, is there anything particular you'd like to see in cinema or Redshift and technologically developed that would empower you as a creative? Is there something that you're just like, oh, someone's reaching for the mic. Barton's reaching for the mic. So is there something specifically that you're looking for in technology to be developed?
Yes. So just to preface what I'm about to say, 3 to 5 years ago, before we really got into GPU rendering, the types of projects we were doing were drastically different. So if you had asked me 5 years ago if we would be doing, photorealistic, basically what I call 30-second feature films, it wouldn't have been on my radar. I never would have guessed that we are telling the types of stories that we are telling for the brands that we are working with. So the technology has allowed for that to happen. In feeding that addiction, I would love for greater support in the viewport to go bigger and better and crazier scenes inside of Cinema 4D. So just more and more and more polygons and be able to move around to the viewport.
You want worlds inside worlds.
Yeah. Other than that,
you're pretty good.
Yeah.
just infinite worlds in my viewport, real time, of course.
No crashing. No,
absolutely no crashing of any type ever.
No freezing.
Yeah.
Or any of that.
Is this Cinema 4D? Is this industry in general?
Well, we can start with cinema. That's kind of the folks, and then we can go out from there as far as technology that needs to be developed that would help the creative.
I'm just going to go to my go-to answer and say After Effects multi-threading.
Okay,
But,
just speed. So that you so the big demand is speed, and that's I guess also with viewport is to have infinite objects and still maintain that speed, and that goes right in with client deadlines.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on technology they'd like to see developed?
I'd like to see more substance designer integration, or
For texturing?
and just
Texture
continue-
tools?
I mean, they're working on it now, but continuing to move with the standards for like universal textures, because a lot of the stuff right now in gaming, like their texturing stuff and our texturing stuff is kind of coming together as well. And the stuff I'm seeing with substance designer is pretty amazing. So just more of that.
Yeah, a universal texture system would be amazing. Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, so for me, it's okay. So this is a little more abstract, but like I want my application to be a better partner in a way. Like I want it to be intuitive and anticipating my design process and working with me. Like that's machine learning and other things that like, it's in the background, but it's being predictive of what I'm doing, and we're working together, and it's more, it's more relational. Not that the program isn't now, but I feel like we're going to be moving past tools that are specifically tools.
So you want more like predictive actions, kind of like a Google
subtler
inside
than
the
that.
commander or something?
No, it's subtler than that. Like if I'm
Okay.
making, if I am making some design decisions, maybe it comes alongside of me. It's just like, hey, this curve would work better.
Oh, I think
I was
like a
gonna say
brainstorm.
Clippy. You want Clippy?
No, right?
You want Clippy.
Clippy for C4D.
Yeah, well, or even simpler,
Or the brainstorm button. That was a hit.
in a way, like there's more useful versions of Brainstorm out there than what exists now. Like that was a really crude glimpse into, I think, the way that stuff's going to work in the future.
I can see it going as far as smart texturing. If you look at some of the stuff NVIDIA's doing right now, where you just go to this website and you can just paint with some little tools like Microsoft Paint, and then it makes a landscape out of it. I think it's not, of course, ready for prime time yet, but down the line, say you're making like a big cityscape or something in Cinema 4D, and you're like, man, now I'm going to have to like texture all these buildings or something, and it realizes that those are buildings, and it just textures it for you.
So a little bit of
that's-
predictiveness instead of
Yeah.
the tediousness of design. You can maybe give references and
Yeah, I mean, I think his specific example of that landscape stuff,
Yeah.
very useful.
Right.
Because like, I in my head can understand what I want that landscape to look like. I'm not a modeler. Like, I'm not going to build out all of that stuff, but I have the visual observation from having been a designer for a long time that like I can feel what the right thing is, and if the app works with me, it makes it easier for me to be able to deliver the thing that's in my head.
Neuralink. It's the future, folks.
Straight up.
So this is going to take me to the last question that I have, because I think this will be helpful for everybody in the audience, and that is, what helped you get into the industry as a whole, and what would you have as advice for people today, diving in? It's very different industry, much more dynamic. To me, this is the next section is to start it off. I say networking is still the biggest thing that you can do if you're starting off, coming to different events like this, NAB, SIGGRAPH, the road shows, anywhere in your community we're going to meet people, they're going to connect you to more information and everything else. So that would be
And more jobs.
More opportunities.
Especially more
jobs.
jobs.
And it's a very different thing. So what would you suggest? And meeting people, you can create that rapport. They can know that you're trustworthy. You build that up, and those relationships still take you to the future. But what else do you think for anybody starting today, or what got you in that helped? And what would you recommend as far as tools or resources, even like Cineversity or School of Motion, Mograph, like all the different tools? What helped you, and what would you recommend?
I'm reading this book right now called "Let My People Go Surfing," which is about the dude from Patagonia who started Patagonia. And in the beginning of the book, he states, the most important thing that you can do is ask questions. Even, don't be afraid to ask a question to somebody. So I think it's as simple as that sometimes, is if you have a question or you don't know how to do something, go to a tutorial site and learn how to do it, or try to, find out, don't be afraid to ask questions and, grow in that way. So
Jumping off of that, also, don't let yourself become stagnant. This industry is growing fast, It's like the medical field. Every day you see about some new, miracle cure or something like that. That's the way it is in our industry as well. There's new tools and stuff. I feel like I'm totally behind because I don't know fields that well, And so, to be able to incorporate all these new tools and new plugins and new resources, go online, do some tutorials, stay up to date, because if not, you're going to get left behind real fast.
I'm going to say the exact opposite.
Okay. Don't learn it all.
Stop all education.
No, actually, this is more of a bigger point of don't listen to any one of us or any one person or any one source. I think that the most important thing is to be flexible, vision, flexibility, and not getting overwhelmed. Because I think that that's an area where I see all the possibilities out there, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm being left behind. I don't know this. I don't know this tool, this function. I see a really cool thing. I'm like, I have no idea how they did that. And I'm already close to getting into a paralysis in life from those kinds of decisions. So I have to limit that stuff. But my whole career has been like water, I feel like opportunities present themselves. I might take a risk on it based on my information at the time. But I'm not actually saying the opposite. But if you find yourself doing one thing and, maybe you're finding your way to be the best person at that thing too, and stay flexible, but, there's going to be a middle ground to everything. So honing in on one thing, being a generalist, hitting this field in, broadcast, or, being open to doing broadcast AR, whatever the things are. I think you have to every market is different. Every person is different. Every client is different. And this is, I hope to overwhelm you with the options. But that's my feeling, is I think it's really easy to find a book or a source or a course or whatever. And I don't learn the same as so many people. I wish I've bought so many courses, and I've done the first 5 minutes or grabbed a little bit there. That's just how I learn. And so just because it works for someone else doesn't.
Yeah, how many people have taken EJ's course? How many people finished it?
Oh, damn.
It's beefy.
It's beefy. It's beefy.
That's 10 weeks of pure Cinema 4D knowledge crammed in your cranium.
It's like this every day, every single day.
Yeah. No, it's literally this, me up there for 2 hours every day.
Every day.
Every day, yeah.
So that, anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got starting out, I found this little website when I was first learning 3D. It was called grayscalegorilla.com. You might have heard of it. And there was a video, I have no idea where it is or if it's still out there, but Nick Campbell said something about if you don't hate your work from 1 year ago, then you haven't really progressed. And I've always kind of taken that into consideration. Luckily, sometimes I do hate my work from a year ago. The other thing that I learned very
I think
early.
my work from a week ago.
Right.
And I showed an 11-year-old project.
So one of the things that I really learned the hard way, because we talk about this on the show a lot, that 3D artists usually come from two different areas. It's either from like a video or cinema perspective, or they come from a design background. I came from video. And so all the technical stuff really made sense to me. Like, I really got it. I was like, this is great. I'm loving this. I can build things and whatever. But I put some stuff out there, and I was just slaughtered online. And the people who weren't super like negative and critical of it and actually gave me some real advice said, you need to learn design and design principles. And so I started getting into that, looking at books and learning about that. And I'm still on that journey even now because I just didn't come from that background. But having design principles as a base, I think, is very important.
That's huge. So yeah, Brian, did you have something else?
Yeah, I mean, two minor things. One, I would go off of that. Like, I feel like the biggest thing is just being able to understand why something is. Like, when you're thinking about an image, before you even go in, having sort of an idea of how you might go about putting it together. But I think the other thing is just like, take care of yourself. So I've been freelance for a year now. And one of the reasons I made the decision to go freelance, because I burned out hard after 7 years at a production company in town. And I'm very proud of the work that I put in when I was there, but I burned out hard. And it was, it was a rough year getting back together. And like, I feel like if I had done a better job of managing that and not, I think the longest I ever lived at the office during a project was 9 days. Jeez. I think the longest continuous shift I ever put in on a deadline was 76 hours.
That's illegal, right?
And that's a
I'm
business owner.
salaried, and I had made the decision to do it on my own.
So
I
finding
wanted
that
it to be a
balance.
certain way, but like taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that work-life balance.
Yeah,
so that's,
work-life balance is very important.
I don't think it's work-life balance, because I don't think you're ever going to attain a balance. Like, it ebbs and flows, and it goes back and forth. But being aware of what you're doing, and like being willing to like push yourself a little bit, but like know where you're pushing yourself too far, and that you're going to be, instead of building the muscle with that lift, like there's a point at which it goes from building muscle to tearing muscle.
all right. So finding your boundaries as far as what's healthy for you as an artist and as a human, having a physical body and not just a machine.
And having good people around you who will point out that you're being an idiot.
Yeah, and that's why we
very
network.
Thankful for
That's why you
people like
network with good people, and that's why we have everybody else here. Some of these folks are in town is making that network a thing. I want to open it up. Let's first thank our panel, and then we'll open it up. So let's a big round of applause for everyone. So thank you so much. And while we have them here, let's take a couple questions from the audience. And I still want to leave at least, a half hour. So we have about 10 minutes to open it up for the audience. Any questions? If not, I can just keep throwing them out. But okay, over here to the left. What's your name, sir?
Derek Elliott.
Derek. Welcome, Derek. What's your question?
It's okay. You use Blender, I know.
Yeah, the secret's out. I'm a big Blender guy.
Oh, okay.
Might not use it for you, but
Welcome. You got 3 months of cinema just for showing up. So there you go.
I might give it a shot. So you guys were talking earlier a little bit about how, I think the barrier to entry is getting a little lower. There's things like, Octane, like you said, you can just throw some stuff together, put it in there, it's going to look beautiful. There's Instagram followers, get a lot of attention. How, when so many people can make such beautiful work in short periods of time with not, an immense amount of knowledge, how do you, I guess, kind of question for everybody, how do you differentiate yourself? And, when they're looking at a bunch of portfolios, how do you command that higher price? Because,
So I guess I'll try and simplify it if everybody didn't heard, and that's how do you differentiate yourself
from people? Yeah,
from people.
I'm
you make it
there's
PG.
a lot of people clones out there.
You make it PG. That's how.
No, like you go on Instagram, it's like every single Instagram post by almost all these followers, they look like Beeple renders, you know? And it's like when we had Beeple on the show, we played this game called Beeple or Sheeple, you know? And he had to point out which one was his original render and which one was someone just copying his, all right? And we actually slipped him up. We said, did you do this or did someone else? He said, oh, someone else did that. I said, no, that was you, dude. You know, 12 years of Beeple renders, and you know, everyone gets these influences and stuff. The way I think you differentiate yourself, because everyone can put out an Instagram, you know, post a day. Everyone can do a daily. What's going to separate you from everyone else is doing something bigger than that. You know, do a short film, do a bigger project where you're creating your own story, because the ones that I've seen that really stick out are the ones who have done these short films or done personal projects or something like that and have gone so much further beyond just the daily.
Yeah, tell a good story.
Tell a good story.
And I think that goes back to the concepts of design, like you were saying, Dave, as far as design matters. So you can replicate good design, but understanding the foundations and the fundamentals of storytelling and design, from color, composition, things like that, as well as storytelling, it's very different, because you can see a very simple line animation and it can move you, or you can see something that's, you know, has, you know, photorealistic and it's, you know, highly detailed render and it just doesn't do anything, and you're going to share the one that does. You know, so.
I would say also that that image that someone has on Instagram, they might have found that, not like physically found it online, but they might have
Chris
found
Brown?
their way there. They might have wandered through the woods and gotten there. And so you say, like, you know, like, this image is X, and I got from A to X by wandering through the alphabet. And I mean, no shade if it's beautiful and it's art and that's the process, but if I hire someone, they can't do that. I need to say X, and they go from A to X. Like, you know, that's a huge thing. Being able to execute someone else's vision based on those notes. I mean, like, you know, you could be an Instagram artist or just an artist, and that's wonderful. But if you want to work in motion graphics as a, you know, designer, animator, you have to really understand those steps and be a good client yourself.
To be able to bring other people's visions to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, as an artist, commercially, I think that goes back to being a commercial artist. Yeah.
So piggyback on the Instagram thing, some of the most talented people that I know that work at studios, if you look at their Instagram page, it's barren. Yeah. And that's because very few followers, because they're in the trenches actually working with the people. They have the relationships with the people to get hired. Yeah, exactly. But I think you can't just focus on Instagram followers and stuff like that. You actually have to come to events like this. You have to meet people. You have to make the right connections. Like Matt was saying, I've been feeding him a lot of work because he knows me. I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Mathias and Paul. And I wouldn't have met them if I didn't come to an event just like this in my city in DC when I was living there. So as the barrier gets lower, as the industry gets bigger and bigger, there's going to be way too much noise out there. And the only way you cut through that noise is you do stuff like this. You meet face to face with people. That's how you break through. It's not exactly you have the best work, you have the best reel. It's you're the best person to work with. You're awesome to work with. And that's basically it.
Yeah, maybe also think about, you know, where do you want to be? Because not every one of us wants to run our own studio. You know, some of us want to be freelancers the rest of our lives. Some of us just want to hit that one awesome, like, short film, sell it to Sundance, you know, make $1 million, I guess, if that's how it's done. I don't really know. Y'all are from Austin. Y'all know how it's done, right? And then, you know, retire. You know, that's my plan. I just want to make cartoons my whole life. I'm trying to find a way to do that. But, you know, also focus on what you want to do, you know, because that's going to change your route. I totally forgot how I got on that subject.
This might or might not be related, but I don't know. I was having a conversation. I don't know. I was having a conversation with Mark, who works for Barton, and about this weird subject, like, it's kind of along that design concept. I have a really hard time coming up with initial concepts. It's really, really hard for me. But if I see a concept, I can kind of think out in my head technically how I would make that happen. So if you're having trouble with that, you may not be that person who can come up with something like with a blank canvas, but you might be the technical person that could actually pull it off. And you know, you can make a really good living doing that too. So don't feel frustrated if you can't do one of those things.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about networking is like having a team to help execute a vision, and having a studio. You're hiring, I'm sure, people that are specialized, and you're looking for specialization as well as generalists. So I think that that's the beauty of our industry is there's a little bit of something for everybody. If you're just a specialist or technical and you know the ins and outs of things, other artists are going to hire you because they're going to need to execute their vision. And if you're a technical guy and you really can execute, you're going to be working with artists. So that's the real beauty, I think, in our industry. Is there another question from the audience we have? Awesome. Any questions from our panel that you guys want to ask another member of the panel?
So, no, I'm good.
Barton,
Okay.
how do you see you guys changing over the next few years? Do you think you're going to end up staying? You've been doing a lot of shoe stuff, a lot of watch stuff. Like,
Yeah, you
I mean, that's
building in 3 more years.
I mean, but is that the end game? Like, what do you guys want to be doing?
Yeah, for me personally, I tend to have a very strong creative vision when it comes to products. So I will hear of people that just can't wait to get out of client work and do their own thing, whether that's products or teaching or things like that. For me personally, I love the spot that we're in. I love the brands that we're working with. I find very much creative fulfillment in developing creative briefs for sneakers and watches and boats, which is kind of what we've fallen into. And so we're in a sweet spot, and I'm just super thankful for it. And so there's definitely nothing on my radar that's trying to get out of this position as quickly as possible. I think I'm not clueless, though. I know that these brands are going to what's hot at the moment. So I've made it very aware to our team, you know, there's going to come a day when we're going to be older and we're going to want to spend cell phones for Samsung for videos instead of doing really cool sneaker stuff, and that'll be okay because we can always dumb down the level of creativity and animation that we do, but it's a lot harder to go up. So I do believe that at some point we will probably be doing a little bit less fun, less cooler work, but hopefully that's 2 or 3 decades from now.
Barton, let me ask you this question, because this is something that I've been curious about, you know, with how do you look into the future? And this is more about running a studio and maybe like being a freelancer and looking into the future and worrying, you know, about future finances and stuff like that. Like, what happens if the economy takes a dump, right? Mm-hmm. And some of these big studios and stuff, because I worked for a company where our major our major client was Samsung. Every single part of that company was reliant on Samsung. And when Samsung had their big, you know, phone blowing up on planes and stuff like that disaster, that company folded. You know, working with some of these big brands, you know, they're paying top dollar. How do you make sure that you're comfortable, you know, and staying afloat for the coming years if something bad were to happen? You know what I'm saying?
There's nothing comfortable about being an entrepreneur. So that's the answer. Yeah, I mean, there's no way to combat that. I will say, obviously, if you're running a business, it's not wise to have any one client make up more than 25% of your revenue. I know of agencies that have, you know, this isn't large for an agency, but agencies that are 30 to 40 people, and 98% of their work comes from one client. And so essentially they're not in business for themselves, they work for that brand. And if that brand leaves them, you know, there's no way they're going to survive. There was a point in time at Already Been Chewed where one of our clients made up I don't know, maybe like 30 or 40% of our revenue. But we were also very small. We were like maybe 3 or 4 people at the time. And so I just knew, and that made me very nervous that they made up that much of our revenue, because I typically will run our studio based off of what I don't want versus having this grand vision of what I do want.
Explain that.
So I know exactly what I don't want. I won't go into the full list of it,
You don't
but
want to do like explainer videos.
I don't want to do explainer videos.
okay.
Yeah, I don't want to work with certain types of people. You know, those are the things that kind of drive the decisions that I make, are all the things that I don't want to deal with. And so to go back to what we talked about earlier, with the GPUs and what we're doing now, I could have never told you, here's what I plan to do. You know, when I started ABC 10 years ago, I could have never told you I plan to work with Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, Vans, DC shoes. I'm in no way like just, you know, trying to drop brand names, but what I'm saying is I could have never told you that I want to work with these brands and I'm going to do it from Wiley, Texas.
Right.
Because if that had been my vision 10 years ago, anybody on the planet would have looked at me and said, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there were things that I knew I didn't want to do, and those were the ways that are kind of like driving things today.
So along those lines, how do you tell people out here, you know, and us, how do you kind of pick and choose, you know? What do you have to do?
What's your filter system, I guess? What's your
What do you
filtering?
have to make sure that you do in order to not have to take, you know, there's the meal jobs, you know,
Yes.
and then there's the real jobs. And you guys are only taking real jobs, you know? So it's like, how do you make sure you're not doing those explainer videos that you don't want to do? Or, you know, if you do like explainer videos, how do you make sure you only do explainer videos? You know?
I mean, this is not new information, I wouldn't think, but only post the work that you want to do again. You know what I mean? So if you're doing things for the meal that you don't want to land more of, don't post that. Find time to post the personal project, or you know, the project that comes in that has a smaller budget, but it's an opportunity to be super creative. Like, go ham on that project, make it amazing, and post it everywhere. And so we run our studio. I liken it almost to like a record label, in the sense that record labels have albums that go platinum, and those platinum albums will pay for all the other albums that were duds. And it's very similar to be able to build your portfolio. I mean, even to this day, we have certain clients that the budget wasn't good, but we knew it was a creative outlet and it was going to be amazing. And then the next time somebody hires us to do something similar, they don't know or care what we charged for it. And so it's a little less about just doing like these personal projects that are completely unpaid for. It's more about, okay, this is an opportunity to do something amazing, even though their budget isn't worthy of it. The next shoe company is never going to know what we charged for that one, and that helps build, you know, all these other things. And then you get one that comes along and it's got a huge budget and it paid for the other 3 that you did for a little bit cheaper.
So it allows you to be more of a pioneer with a certain design style that you know is going to pick up steam, or it's valuable to you.
I'd just like to say, Barton, that your business advice has been amazing over the years. It's really helped us.
Look out for his upcoming podcast.
Your first DFW C4D talk, that was our very first event that you did. The one thing that Matt and I both took away from it was this. We talked earlier about, you know, not undercutting yourself, but knowing your worth, but then fill up your calendar, and when your calendar's full and you're not sleeping, raise your rates. And that has allowed us to go from taking the $2,000 projects to the $20,000 projects, and it's attracted the types of clients that we've really wanted. So thank you for that.
It's really interesting seeing your invoicing service go from $100, $200 projects, all these little, you know, 3 digits up to like 5-digit projects. It's really, you know, exciting to see that happening. whatever. Cool.
Awesome.
Y'all don't care about that.
You guys were talking about diversification to a certain degree. Like, at Rooster Teeth, one of the things that I thought they did really well was that if you looked at a model of the company, it looked in a lot of ways like something like Disney, where there were so many different verticals that were feeding into the way the company made money. And so a couple of years ago when the YouTube adpocalypse hit, one of the founders was at a big YouTube meeting, and all of these big channels were complaining about, or really freaking out about the fact that all of their ad revenue was gone in a very similar way to your Samsung story. And I feel like, one of the things that I've kind of tried to take from that as I've gone into freelancing, and that I really wish that more of my artist friends would do, and something that I'm actually trying to do with this project is like, creating additional revenue streams. It sounds like so get rich quick, but like, getting away from a 1-to-1 ratio on time a little bit, and like finding ways to take the art that you're doing and put it out into a product in some way. Like, I think we as motion designers are really shitty at times about like finding, like, all kinds of other artists are really good about creating stuff out of their stuff. And like, we most of the time are trading units of energy for units of production. And like, that only scales to a certain degree. And so finding ways to like, with this t-shirt project, which, is not selling a lot right now, but I have hopes that like in the future, if I can grow that thing, I can be a little pickier about the work that I'm doing. And by doing that, it's not just a matter of, filling up the calendar and being able to up your rates and going to bigger clients. It's carving out space to be able to create work that's not necessarily driven by the client's project that can then later on get you the client project. Finding ways to self-generate that isn't just self-generating work, but is self-generating revenue at the same time.
One thing I always say is design for the job you want, not the job you have. And that's based off of that phrase, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So a lot of times it doesn't matter what client that we were working with creatively. I was going to try to obviously meet the client's needs, but I'm also pushing my own creative agenda. Like, I want to do this, I want this effect makes sense for this client, and I know that if I do this effect, it's going to help propel me into this industry where I'll be able to do something else. So I think that's part of it as well. And just looking for ways to do it in a paid situation. We're not at the luxury where I can't block off our schedule and have our guys, work on a personal project for ABC to try and break into a new industry. It'd be a nice situation if we could. So in our slow growth, it's definitely been, designing for the job we want, not the job we have, and trying to get into a new industry or, new type of brand based off of the fact that we did this and it was for a nonprofit organization. That nonprofit organization isn't necessarily as cool, but they gave us a ton of creative freedom, and we did something, pretending it was going to be like a spot for Nike someday, but it made sense, it worked for the client, and creatively it allowed us to really push ourselves.
Awesome. Great. So I'm going to close it out there. Let's give our speakers a round of applause.
We got more questions.
Well, we're going to have actually 20 minutes for networking. So if you guys can hang out for that, I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to be able to use the space and actually share that. So let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers.
If anyone is from Dallas, we're having a beer meetup in Dallas tomorrow night. Just throw that out there.
And so we also have, let's give a round of applause for our sponsors for making this possible as well. So that's a huge deal. And the good news is just about everything that you heard here, you guys are leaving with a number of different tools. So you're getting Cinema 4D, you're getting Redshift, you're getting a $100 coupon at Kitbash, LinkedIn Learning. There's just so many different things that you're getting. So be on the lookout for that follow-up and be able to start working with that. So if you're looking at going into multimedia in a lot of different ways, VR, if you're looking at that, Cineversity has a number of trainings to be able to export. If you're looking at AR, if you're looking at VR, those pipelines pipelines, you're looking at the game pipeline. All those things are now accessible to you just from leaving here today. You already have that. So you'll have 90 days to be able to really dive deep. So take this opportunity to, explore those things, and hopefully this show helped that a little bit. So we can all meet out in the lobby. So I'll be here. I think some of our artists are here. Some of you guys have renders, I'm sure, to check up on. But we'll be here. And thank you, everybody. And once again, before you leave, definitely meet somebody. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much, Austin.
Mograph.com, an online resource for motion graphic artists. Start your week with the Mograph podcast. Industry news, interviews with your favorite artists, and terrible humor. Watch live shows and interviews from Mograph events like NAB, SIGGRAPH, Half-Res, and local meetups. Our Mograph Talks feature live demos and motivation from artists all around the world.
Sometimes you gotta make stuff that you're not gonna put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
What if Rick and Morty show up for the countdown at midnight? That's where I peaked in life, in my career.
We gotta stop this thing, Rick! It's gonna kill us all!
Hear from the people that create your software, design your render engines, and artists that are changing the face of modern motion graphics.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Mograph tutorials and online classes will teach you about Cinema 4D, After Effects, as well as other popular software and render engines.
Throw in the HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
Branch into new software. Learn time-saving tips, techniques, workflows, and lessons that'll keep you up to date in the world of motion design.
Oh, brother, those are some of my favorite elves.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join the conversation in our live sessions. Check out our plugins or join the hundreds of daily active users in our Slack channel for technical help, advice, contests, or just to joke around.
Real nice banana.
That's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Subscribe today and get the latest updates on our YouTube and other social media channels.
Take all your dreams and just do it!
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe to Mograph.com.